Greetings, everyone. Welcome to our Agile Austin Leaders Special Interest Group. We will be posting this on our Agile Austin YouTube channel. Yay. So today, June 3rd, thanks for coming out. We see that some folks are joining. I've told people as they join, please feel free to put where you're joining from in the chat, and we are here for the next hour. Let us have fun. We are part of the larger Agile Austin organization. We connect, we collaborate, we share all things Agile in this community. And we'll talk a little bit about that from an intro perspective before we get into today's session. Max Akesi, I'd like to introduce myself very briefly. I'm an IT senior manager at PayPal. I've been in Austin for 20 years. Yes, and I'm still here. I'm still here. I kind of like it. And they haven't kicked me out of town yet. So, it's all good. It's all good. I'm going to ride this wave. I'm going to ride this wave until I can't anymore. Folks, I have the power to mute. So who is it that is not muted? And wow, my wife would like to have that power on me, right? So anyway, what we do here, we meet the first Friday of every month. We bring a speaker, we have a topic, and what the focus is Leaders SIG, Special Interest Group. Anything that we can do to share how to lead Agile adoptions, Agile transformations, we talk about it here. And this is across the board. It doesn't matter what role you are, executive, tester, a developer. You can lead an Agile mindset transformation within your space, right? And that's what we talk about here. I forgot to say also, I am actually the Agile Austin president also. CEO, I founded this SIG around 10 plus years ago. And if we have time afterwards, I'd like to say the cool things about the transformation. But let's keep on going about this because a lot changes in 10 years in the SIG. Membership, if you would love to be a member, go onto our site, agileaustin.org, see about all the cool stuff we do. Sponsors, contact us if your company or if you own a company or whatever the case may be, and you'd like to sponsor us. Shout out to our sponsors. We have 3 sponsors, and go to our site to find more of what they do. And we've got platinum and silver sponsors, retrospectives for platinum sponsors, and silver sponsors are Ad Meliora Coaching. That is Erin, and she's awesome. And WellSky also is our silver sponsors. Oh, is that a shout out from a WellSky person? Hey, yay, Harrison there, way to go. Thank you to you and Adam Lee, who is also happens to be on our board, right? And he's there also. So we have a lot of different special interest groups. Not gonna go through all of them, but it's just to raise the awareness that if you want to get the notifications of all of these, the easiest thing to do, which I just put in the chat, sign up to our Agile Austin meetup group, and you'll get the notifications of the coaching SIG, the Scrum Master SIG, the book club, the Kanban Lean Coffee, etc., etc. I think that these SIGs have been very powerful because a lot of people have a lot of different needs when it comes to Agile learning and sharing the best practices. So I would encourage people. I attend about 3-4 SIGs a month because it's just always awesome to learn something new, right? We have Ned here, who is the book club SIG. I see you, Ned. And there are probably some other folks that do other SIGs. And coming soon, sneak preview, we have a product SIG that is gonna get started again. We had a product SIG before. It kind of went away a couple of years back. Now we're planning to bring it back because product space is very important. It is a very important part, okay? So we've got the board folks here. I see Steve here, our vice president. Shout out, Steve. Hey, vice president, COO. We just had elections, so we will be updating this soon. But Steve and I are still here. we're still going to be in the board. We'll have a couple people that are changing, but yes, anything that I say, any ideas or stuff that people want to share with the board@agileaustin.org. Shoot us an email, send a question, tell us how great like we're doing. Okay, please.
Yeah.
And if you are interested in volunteering, besides the volunteer page that I'm putting out there in the chat from our Agile Austin site, we have 2 roles, Director of Membership and Director of Volunteers, okay, that we're trying to search for. And I think that we've had such awesome success with our volunteers. We just put out a call for social media volunteers. And in the last 2 months, we created our first social media committee. Imagine we're going to be like posting stuff all across social media in an automated way. Wow. Like, you know, and just go and find out more about these sites if you have an interest, or even just shoot an email to contact@agileaustin.org if you have an interest in these 2 roles. I don't think
if I can, Max,
please,
since
Steve.
this is the Leadership SIG, wink, wink. You know, if you're looking for a little bit of that leadership experience, I do see a couple of these areas really kind of branching out over the next year. So this is your chance to kind of get in that ground floor and really practice a lot of those leadership things that we're going to be talking about in this SIG.
Woo! Thank you, Steve. Thank you. I also put a link to our YouTube channel. Go subscribe. I mean, like if you have an, you know, I'm making an interest. All of these things are free, provided by the Agile Austin organization. Always a fun time to share best practices with our community. We're going to have Eliot here today, and we're going to talk about being agile prior to the Agile Manifesto. We're going to go a little bit old school. Yes, it's going to be fun, okay? Because sometimes we get stuck in just what has happened in the last 10 years of things. But, you know, sometimes understanding the history, the origins of things might even give us an idea of how to go back to some things that were there in the past that we lost along the way. Just saying, just saying. And then we have the July 4th, we're taking off. Happy summer, happy July 4th. And Ned is gonna be here in August talking to us about some portfolio/product stuff. First things first, prioritize your portfolio. Okay, anytime we want to lead an agile transformation, it's really important to sort out some of your prioritization from the portfolio tier. It's incredible how important that is. No further ado, let's get straight into it. Today, we're going to have with Eliot Kimber, being agile prior to the Agile Manifesto. This is going to be one of the new series that we're doing where we call them guided discussions. So it's going to be like /podcast/ conversation with particular topics that Eliot and myself are going to do. So I still get to talk during this. Oh, somebody stop me. Yeah, Eliot.
Yeah.
Hold on, Eliot. Hold on. Let me get this. There you go. Okay. Now we've switched over to our slide. Eliot, who are you, Eliot? Who are you?
Yeah. So, well, I've been doing what I do for a very long time. I now call myself a software engineer, but I actually started as a technical writer back at IBM. I'm a founding member of the XML working group. So my name's on the XML specification. That's kind of nice. And I've been doing, you know, software development and design of some form since the mid 80s. And I've worked for the biggest companies and the smallest companies and everything in between. Been my own boss, and I've worked in a lot of different industries. And then, so for this venue, I can say I've been doing Agile since the late 90s, back when we called it extreme programming. And then currently I work at ServiceNow, started there about a year ago, doing support and system integration and development for the ServiceNow product content team, which is about, well, soon probably 200 writers writing all of the ServiceNow product documentation. So,
thank you, thank you, and it's good to have you here, Eliot.
Well,
Good to have you. You know, I met Eliot not too long ago, and it was at a birthday party. And of course, what else to talk about at a birthday party than Agile stuff?
Right. Yes.
Just like randomly, like you never know who you'll meet in Austin at a party and strike up an Agile conversation. I'm like, Eliot, I want to hear some of the stuff that you did prior to the manifesto and all that. Come, let's have a chat. And here he is.
Yeah. There you go.
And I will mute. Boom. I already kind of introduced myself. The only thing I wanted to bring up is I've been sharing a lot. I've been doing like for 12 plus years, leading Agile transformations at large corporations. I have never worked at a corporation that has fewer than 40,000 people. I wouldn't know what it would be like. I would be lost. Like, wear multiple hats? No, wait, hold on a second. What does that mean, right? And so that's where all my experience comes from. And I started being Agile back in 2007. A lot of people are not aware that Dell, like Dell.com, was the first e-commerce site that sold $1 million in a single day via an e-commerce site. That was the first company that ever did that. They were selling like servers, computers, everything through like an e-commerce site. Like you click on stuff and you buy, and that was in the 90s when Amazon was only selling books. Then the rest is history, how Amazon took over the e-commerce world. And yes, maybe I was part of the fall of the e-commerce side of Dell, who knows, right? But that was a big deal. And we had to make changes to our e-commerce site daily, not like, let's plan things out for like a few months and then let's roll that out. No, it's like, be fast, be agile, right? So can we do a quick poll? Just a quick poll that I put together, because sometimes you're not sure about the experience in the audience and all of that. So I'm going to launch it, and you should see this pop up for you so that Eliot and myself can like see, hey, what kind of expertise do we have here? And so tell us about your Agile experience. Is it 10 plus years, 5+ years? Just got started being Agile. As you notice, I said being Agile, not doing Agile. That's a whole other story. And can't wait to start. We sometimes lose perspective that for us folks that maybe have had Agile exposure for years, over a decade, that there's some people that are just here just to like hear what it's about. And that is totally cool. And we have 25 people that have replied. I'll give you another few seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and do you want to see the results, folks? You want to see the result? Okay, and there you go. So we have, ooh, interestingly enough, 10 plus years is the biggest group with 41%. That is surprising because it's normally not that high. And please, folks, do go on mute if you're not. And I've got the power. It's so 41%, 5 plus 22%, just getting started. There are a lot of people that are just getting started. It's the first time they took up a role as a product owner / manager, scrum master, or just took a course and just got started, right? And then there's a certain amount that can't wait to start, right? So that can give us a perspective that we have a mix, okay? We have a mix here. So very quickly, when we're talking about the manifesto that was rolled out in 2001, we're talking about the 4 values and the 12 principles. This is just, set the context. When we say the manifesto, some people sometimes think it's just the 4 values. It's the values, 4 of them, and the 12 principles, right? So that was a big kind of, introduction to what is Agile, even though it might have been done prior as practices. That was almost like the brand started in 2001. Okay. And not that I want to go through the whole history, but some people say that all the way back to Deming, and even prior to that, there was a lot of Agile mindset, Agile concepts, like getting quick feedback from customers and users that use your product, and integrating that feedback into your planning and everything. Like, there are things that have been going on for a very long time, and it might even go hundreds of years back in some cases. But I think it's just key for a lot of times when we think about Agile, we sometimes get stuck with process frameworks and other things. I've heard people say, yes, I do Agile because I'm implementing SAFe. Okay, that's good, and that can definitely help you out. But when they talk about the values and the principles or the mindset, they always go back to a process framework to explain things. So I think that's just key to understand that, right? Eliot, tell us a bit about what your experience was like way back then when you were working at IBM in the 80s, and what challenges were there, like prior to an Agile mindset? How fast were products delivered, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah. So I mean, when I worked at IBM, we were working on products with a 2 or 3 year release cycle, right? And but at the same time, like the product, I started working at IBM in 1984. The product that I was documenting had been in the field for 20 years. When I started working there, that product's still in the field. I left IBM in 1994, right? So it was a very different way of thinking about things. But that was our approach. It was all waterfall. You had to do a year's worth of planning and designing and specifying and going through committees before you could ever write any code, right? And then when you wrote your code, you went and off to your room and you wrote your code for 6 months, and you came back and said, "Here, I wrote some code," right? And it's like,
and it worked, right?
Well,
I mean, they're
yeah.
still a profitable company.
Well,
They're
sure,
still
but they're
around.
not. It's not the company I worked for 30 years ago, right? So, like one of the things that we realized. So I worked in. So I was part of the what we called information development, which is the technical writing group, and I moved from being a technical writer to being part of the tool support team. And one of the things we started to realize was that our process for managing the tools that the writers used had become completely bound in its own process. Like if you wanted to get, we used basically the same kind of markup we use today. If you wanted to get a new tag added for something, it took 6 months to get that through the governance committee, right? To get it approved, and then you had to get it implemented. That might take another 6 months or a year, right? And that just, even at that time in the late 90s, or late 80s, early 90s, that was too slow, right? Things were starting to speed up even then, right?
Yeah.
And so we started developing as a technology a way of managing the actual markup design that we used, so that it was inherently more agile and more flexible. That architectural approach that we started producing back then is now it was the forerunner of what I now use today, for example, at ServiceNow, that allows us to be very agile in the sense of I can make changes quickly, right? I can respond to new requirements quickly. I can try things out, validate them, right? So all the development practices and tools and approaches that we use in agile development, we were starting to see the need for that back then in 88, 89, 90 timeframe, and starting to build tools within our technical documentation domain to do that. But it was still in the context of this big iron approach, right? And then, so I left IBM in 1994, went to work as a consultant doing tools work in documentation space. And then I also became involved with, I was invited to be a founding member of the XML working group, right? So this was the very beginning of the internet, and things were changing so fast. Like, so we had developed a standard at IBM that got published in 1996. The XML standard was published in 1998, which made the standard that we had developed, published the year before, obsolete.
Imagine how fast it and sorry for folks here that might not be aware of XML. Do you mind to just give a brief?
Sure. So I mean, XML is a standard. It was published in 1998, and it's, anything you see that's got angle brackets in a file, right? Like configuration files, documentation files, HTML files. That's all HTML. It's a standard that basically forms the underpinning of a whole bunch of the technology of the internet, right? It was an internet. It was a W3C standard, right? So it was developed basically as a reaction to HTML, because we wanted to be able to take our high value documents that we had been creating in big companies like IBM, Hewlett Packard, and put them in browsers and have them render really nicely, right? Exactly. That was the genesis of the XML standard, right? Exactly. And now it underpins all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, no, and thanks for sharing that, because that in itself shows there was a need for something.
Yeah.
And people reacted to it, right? I mean, I think that nature of adapting quickly to change, right? That is something that a lot of people in an agile mindset have to keep at heart, and always have to, like, you have to sense and adapt. And sometimes companies like IBM, no criticism to IBM,
right.
there were a lot of companies, at least IBM still exists. There are a lot of companies like Blockbuster and Kodak and we
digital equipment.
Exactly. Commodore, Atari. Yeah. There are a lot of companies that were really, like, you would think they were at the cutting edge. They were doing things that they were leaders in their market, but something happened. Something happened, right?
Right.
And
yeah. So that whole experience, I mean, it certainly impressed me with just how rapid the change in the speed with which things was changing, right? And so that was a real, for me, that was a transformative experience. But it was a transformative experience, I think, for companies at the time, right? You either got with the program or you were left behind.
That's it.
And so it was a few years after that we were working on a project, and we had hired a team to do this project. And one of the guys we hired had experience doing a real early form of Agile extreme programming, right? And we did pair programming, we did test-driven development, did all that stuff. And so we were implementing a piece of software, and he said, we're going to do it this way. And he explained it to us, and we're like, yeah, that makes perfect sense, because that waterfall stuff doesn't work, right? We've
like, you didn't want to plan for like 3 months. You didn't want to plan for 3 months.
No. Yeah. So this would have been, trying to think when this was. This was like 98, 99, 2000, but before the Agile Manifesto, right? So we had the extreme programming book. That was our Bible. And we literally had 4x6 cards. That was our task cards. And we had, one box with the cards we had the backlog in one box, and we had the finished things in another box, because, Jared didn't exist. ServiceNow didn't exist,
there was a culture of people coming into the office and be co-located in a spot, right? We have to set that expectation too, right? As opposed to today, right?
Right. Yeah, we had a team. Yeah, we had an office here in Austin. We had a team of about 6 people. We'd come in, and we'd come in at 8:30. We'd work a solid day. We'd get a lot of work done. We'd do our cards, and at 5 o'clock we'd go home, and we lived our lives. And this was right before. This was at the upward curve of the internet bubble, right?
Yes.
When everybody was working insane hours, and we were like, yeah, no, we're done with that, because we were all in our late 20s, early 30s. We had families. We were like, no, we're not doing that.
I mean, you clock out. You just clock out at 5 o'clock, and that's it.
Exactly.
Right?
But knowing that we had gotten a significant amount of work done, like every day we were implementing features, right? Because we had, our stories would be, we would design them to be, a half day's worth of effort or a full day's worth of effort, right? And we were all sitting in one room, so we were communicating, we were doing test-driven development, we were doing all the things that the extreme programming book said we were supposed to do. right? And that was fun. And then that project ended for various business reasons, and now we had to go back to being consultants. And so what became really, really hard, and this is where the leading to change, I think, starts to come into play, is the people who are the project managers and the people trying to do the selling of our contracts to our clients, right? Because we were going to be building stuff for them. We would be like, yeah, we want to do this agile thing where we all trust each other, and we're going to do stuff really fast, and we're not going to have any like upfront plans, and we're not going to commit. We're not going to commit to scope and time, right? And right, you can choose one or the other, but we can't do both. And they're like, no, you can't do that. You have to, like, we have to have the contract up front has to say what the deliverables are going to be in a year, right? Yeah. And we're like, no, it doesn't work. And then like, no, and so we had that fight. I mean, like screaming matches in meetings.
Which we're still having today.
Right,
when it's like, give us the roadmap. The whole roadmap for the whole year and commit to it. And I'm going to hold you responsible for that commitment.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
It is like,
yeah. And then like, so the company I worked for got bought by this internet startup out in Bellevue, and they had a team, and they were trying to quote, do well at the time, extreme programming. And they looked to us for guidance. And I looked at their team, and like, they had put everybody's desk together, but they weren't doing test-driven development. So the builds were breaking constantly, right? And so we looked at it, and the first thing we said was, well, you need to get rid of half your people because you have too many people, right? You can't.
Oh, was that the solution?
Right, you can't communicate, right? You had too many people to communicate. Right?
Oh, I got it, yeah.
Right, because what they were building wasn't that high. It didn't need a team of 40. It needed a team of, maybe 20, right?
Maybe even 20.
Yeah, the VP of engineering didn't like that answer. So he didn't ask us back, but
you were truthful. Like, I think that what happens a lot of times today is that, and no dig at consulting companies, right? Whether it be management consulting, agile consulting, but sometimes their number one priority is getting the contract. For a lot of people. And so they'll bend the rules a little bit. They'll do things that are not really part of their core agile mindset mentality, because they're like, hey, it's still a $3 million contract and it's a big deal for us, right? Let's do it. Yes, we will put a big contract up front. Yes, we'll tell them we could do every single kind of portfolio planning up front and commit to everything up front and never change. Like, they'll just bend the rules a bit, right? And that's the nature of it, unfortunately. Right?
Yeah.
But before we continue a bit, I just wanted to see, I saw some things in the chat that were coming through. Ned, you had a couple of comments. Do you want to chime in real quick? Hey, love it when you interact in chat, but I even love it more when I hear from you.
I'm just carping from the margins, It's the trick to respond to the last thing you said, Max, though, it really comes down to, if you want to be an honest broker as a consultant, don't ask for that 1-year contract. Ask for a 6-week contract, renewable. Right.
Right.
We'll deliver something in 6 weeks, and you'll like it enough to ask for more, or you won't, you'll cancel it. We'll all be happy.
Yeah. And if you don't appreciate it, I mean,
no harm, no foul. If I can't deliver the value you need, then you should find somebody else.
Yeah. I mean, but that takes a certain financial strategy, a business model.
It's called risk. It's also the pitch on that is the risk reduction for the company. Because if somebody says, I'm going to give you $3 million and I want to have something ready in a year, they're taking substantial risk. That 11 months in, you're going to say, you know what, we're not going to make it. We're going to do the cost overrun and the change stuff now, right? The change order stuff, because your needs have shifted. Let's do some change orders. That'll double the cost of the contract, and we'll all be happy. Oh, you won't be happy, but I will.
Yeah, but purchasing knows how to deal with change orders, right? Well, they don't know how to deal with 6-week contracts.
Yeah, but the budget, that's the problem, is the budget guys don't know how to deal. Well, I work for the state of Texas, for University of Texas. That's a 2-year budget cycle, because they only meet once every 2 years to approve budgets.
Yes.
Right.
God help us.
Yeah. So, like, I think that a lot of times, a lot of things in our industry, in our tech industry, forget the other industries also, right? Government industries and other things, haven't even caught up to what we're talking about here. about, if we're going to do work in smaller increments, I'm like an iterative approach. How can we fund work in that way? How can we commit to work in that? Like just all that conceptual support to this kind of approach. Oh, awesome. Awesome. But do you have anything else to add on this topic, Eliot? Because we got a few more things to talk about, but do you want to close up your?
Yeah, just the I would say once I became like, Agile is the only way, right? Out of that experience that I had,
Not going back.
On that first, I'm not going back, right? I'm just like, I'm not going to do it any other way. Even if the contract is a fixed scope, fixed price, fixed schedule contract, I'm still going to do it Agile, right? I'm not necessarily going to tell you, but having that fight with the project managers and the salespeople and the clients, that was a real struggle in the early 90s and even through like 2010s. Now that's gone away. Now, everybody says, all right, we need to do Agile. They don't know what it means, but they say they need to do it. So at least that part of the struggle has gone away.
Yeah. You saying, I want to do this in an Agile way, you don't get the pushback that you would have
exactly.
in the past, right?
Exactly,
like,
yeah.
We have made the Harvard Business Review multiple times, right? Like Agile is like a brand, it's a mainstream thing. But I like what you said, even if they don't understand what it means.
But if I can just tell one more Wall story. So my previous job, I was doing a contract with the Government Accountability Office. It's a federal agency. And we were doing Agile and they were putting Agile in. We got a new director level, VP level person. And he was like, okay, I need your burn down charts to be correct every sprint. Like, I don't want to see any deviations from your burn down charts. I'm like, well, okay, then we'll just spend the first week of every sprint grooming so that our estimates are 100% accurate, right? It's like, yeah, you still got to deal with that.
Yeah, like you still have to deal with some ideas that come out at you and you're like, what? Right? And sometimes it's, you either, you do it because it's a decision maker that says it, or you find another place where they're not asking for that, right? It's like,
okay. Bernie Madoff got into problems because his customers said, not only do we want you to make money over the term, we want you to make money on every bet you make. And you know how that turned out.
Yes.
So that was why poor Bernie, he was pressured by his customers, and then he went in that direction.
That's the contract they wanted. And the other one, I once knew a manager at Bell Labs, this is thousands of years ago, and he solved that burn down chart problem by coming in at the end of the first month and saying, we got nothing done at all. Everything went bad. People got sick and we flamed out and nothing happened at all. But here's what I'm going to do next month. And what he announced was what he was going to deliver the next month was what was already in the can from the previous month. And every month he came out and he forecasted what he was going to do last month. And that worked fine for him. He was always on budget. He was always exactly on track.
That is a new one. That's a new one, Ned. That's a new radical one. Oh, boy. But hey, this is actually a segue to what we were talking about measuring improvements. Thank you, folks. Thank you, Eliot, for bringing up the burn down chart and all the various things, because let's talk about this some more. This is a big problem. This is a big challenge for a lot of people. Like, how do you, okay, yes, now like you're agile, you're doing sprints, you're doing Kanban, you got your Kanban board up there, right? Yeah, now tell me the progress you're making. And some people, unfortunately, still put a lot of the focus on the burn down chart. I try to explain to people, your burn down chart by hours, it doesn't matter how many hours people are working, they might not be delivering any value. I have seen teams that actually worked like nights and weekends and they delivered the wrong thing. Can you imagine, right? And how do you, but they were focused on just coding and testing and doing all this stuff, and nobody ever saw a demo like at the end of a sprint, or nobody ever saw something like show a stakeholder something and they can look and they be like, this isn't exactly what we were thinking about when we wrote the stories. And yes, I know it might have sounded like that to you, but that's not how I meant it. But that didn't happen. So, Eliot, how can people maybe work on measuring improvements? Like, how about if we not just even talk about the success, right? Just, are they improving in this agile journey that they're doing? How can they know, right?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, for me, it's always been about, first and foremost, am I delivering the features that we said we needed up front, right? We did some upfront design. We said, this is our MVP, this is our minimum viable product. These are the set of features that need to be delivered. Have we delivered those over the long term? But then also, like each sprint, am I demoing what you wanted? And is what I'm demoing what's good for you, right? To my mind, that's the primary measurement, right? And then, secondary to that is like, are my estimates improving over time? Or,
my predictability.
Is it predictable, right? Is my Scrum Master actually getting my impediments out of the way, right? But those are all process details, right? I mean, I don't know about anybody else. I find Scrum retros to be incredibly painful because it's like, well, we did our jobs and it worked, and we did it exactly the way we did it the last 18 sprints, so nothing to talk about.
But you still have to have a retro, right?
Well, we still have to have a retro. You still
have to have a retro. Like, I tell teams, if you've gotten to the point that, maybe your team is organic enough that if there's some kind of an improvement, they will bring it up at any time, right? They'll bring it up in the middle of a sprint, at a stand-up and stuff like, hey, I'd like to try something new with this CI/CD pipeline that we have, because things kind of break a lot. And hey, awesome. Put the story on the backlog, own it, and do it, right? Like, you don't maybe have to have a meeting to wait for to bring it up as an impediment.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then again, I do think that getting feedback, a pulse check every few sprints, it could be an anonymous survey, or who knows what. There could be a lot of ways to get feedback without officially having a meeting of sorts, right?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's usually pretty, if things are not working right, it's usually pretty obvious, right?
That's pretty, So I like how you spoke about, having to focus on the features, having to focus on the delivery of those key things. The demo, I think that something that Scrum has helped us out with, that concept of a sprint review or sprint demo, like there's an expectation that you show the work done in the 2 weeks to some kind of a stakeholder that has an interest in it, someone in the product team or in the business side that actually asked for that cares for it to get done, and the focus being more on that. And then whatever the team wants to track themselves with, or whatever internal processes that work for them, give some freedom to the team, some of the autonomy to figure out how to continuously improve, right? That can, and I mean like autonomy is a big deal. There's a book by Daniel Pink on Drive, which talks about what are the intrinsic things that help people and improve. And there's purpose, there's mastery, and there's the autonomy of having the freedom to come up with their own ways of improving things. Right.
But and then there's sort of the strange, almost the paradox of freedom and autonomy within the context of pair programming and team ownership of code, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, as thinking about it as the practice of software engineering, that's an interesting. I think that's an interesting aspect, because if you're used to, I'm just going to go to my cell and do my code and I'll give it to you at the end of the sprint, that's autonomy. You've got autonomy, but it's not in the spirit of agile development, right?
Exactly. So sometimes that might not even deliver the best value, right? So you have to think about it even from that perspective. I love it. But folks, who would like to chime in? We've heard from Ned. Are there any questions that come through the chat? I'm sorry, I'm not paying as much attention on the chat as I should be. I see Sherry is documenting a lot of the comments that we're saying. Thank you. Harrison, I see a comment from you. Principle number 3, deliver early and often to validate our hypothesis of value. Oh, so you're dropping principles on me now, huh? You're dropping principles. Yes, way to go. I think that is such a key. Like when people say early and often, they should just focus on that, because it's like I tell people the biggest value I've gotten from going agile, being agile, is not that stuff gets done faster, right? Because you have a perception. It's not as if you work more. It's not as if you work more nights and weekends. You can work the same amount of time, but you have a perception that stuff is getting done faster because you're doing it in smaller chunks, right? You see things come through faster. But I tell people that's not even what I love most about it. What I love most about it is that you get feedback.
Right.
Earlier and often. It's that feedback, because until you don't give someone something that has to be used, like let's say your PayPal. We work, a lot of my teams are in this customer service part, and we want to see why are there so many complaints on a certain thing. Until we don't put out there some kind of an enhancement, and then we see the clicks of the end users or the customers, we don't know if it actually added value or not. If it addresses the complaints that they had, we don't know. We're just, it's a hypothesis, as the principal says. It's a hypothesis. Yeah. So as soon as we put it out there, and then we see, and now we have so many tools where we can see clicks, we can see data, we can do all this. I mean, like analysis. I don't need a product person or someone in the business to come back and tell me, oh, by the way, we didn't move the needle. I could see it from the data saying, ooh, right. People are still dropping off at the 7th click on this tool. How come? Oh, because the next thing they have to do on this page is way down at the bottom. They have to scroll, and it's not intuitive, and they just stop, right? Like I could see that, but I cannot see that until I put that code out there in production. Until you get stuff out there, you can't understand the value of what you're going to do.
Right.
Hey, Eliot, do you agree with me, Eliot?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, something like one of the things that really attracted me to that, the whole agile practice when we first started doing it was the fact that it allowed you to react to changes in reality quickly and appropriately, right? That by having that clear role of a project owner or a product owner separate from the developers, and having a process that said, oh, our requirements changed yesterday, we can react to that before the end of the sprint, right? Which was something we could never do in the waterfall way that we were doing things like at IBM, or even in the consulting contracts that I did at that time, right? And so that was just like a light bulb going off, right?
I mean,
and then that ripples through everything.
Yeah.
Right. So like somebody said, yeah, maximizing the work not done, right? That's it right there. That's why not only does it feel like you're getting things done faster, you are getting things done faster.
Yes.
Now, the only thing that I've observed is that as people get used to the process, they forget how much stuff we used to do that we didn't need to do. So now the faster process becomes the baseline.
Yeah.
Where it used to be that the old process was the baseline.
First say thank you for being so much more efficient and adding so much more value than 20 years ago. Let's start with a thank you, okay?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And it's like I work on the product that I'm doing the docs release for this morning, it's a 2-week release cycle, right? It's like,
to production.
How does that even work?
To production, right? Like a release
to production,
right. Like
to production.
To production in 2 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, every 2 weeks, a new release of the product with new features and stuff goes out. Yeah. And it's like, okay, that's efficient, but it's also brutal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I mean, because that's the flip side of that things get done faster is that it's easy for the process to become I'm trying to think of the word that I'm looking for, but the word flew right on my head, but it's
onerous.
Onerous, yes.
Onerous, and it gets to a point that if you get in this, continuous cycle, right, like a hamster, and you're just going.
Right.
The question is is everything you're delivering every 2 weeks, is it truly worth the investment of time and effort that you put in it, right? Because now it's just a cycle. Like, you are delivering stuff every 2 weeks. Like, you just get so efficient that are you really maximizing the work not done? Because sometimes there is a huge value in not doing certain stuff because, it's just not a priority. You have to continuously reprioritize.
I put this observation in the chat, but if you're doing things right, and this I owe Scott Killen for this observation. If you're doing things right, you're working on the high value stuff first. So your incremental value over time is in decline. It's going down. And that's also why we talk about cutting the tail. Stop working on stuff that doesn't have enough value for the effort. Go work on something else.
Yes. Yeah. And that is something that even within our org structures and hierarchy, are we structured efficiently to do that? Because there's some orgs that are just like, you will work on back-end applications, and maybe the back-end applications are okay at some point. Like, shift them to work on something else. Like, all our data management is a mess. Go work on data management. But are we from an org structure perspective built to do that? This and a few comments that we've just had here is going to be our last thing that we talk about 10 minutes or more. The future, because now we're talking about, like, Eliot earlier spoke about in the 90s, he was blown away by how fast things were changing. Hey, reality check. Are things changing faster now than they were in the 90s?
Yeah.
Hey, Eliot?
Yes.
Yes. Everybody on this call, things are changing much faster now than they ever have been in our human existence. And guess what? If I were supposed to bet, which I don't gamble, but if I were, I would gamble that things will change even faster in the future. With the introduction of artificial intelligence and a bunch of other things, we will actually we will see a future in which what we thought was like fast, be like 2 weeks deployment. Like, you got to 2 weeks deployment? Oh, Eliot, that's not going to work in the future.
Yeah, now it has to be continuous deployment.
It's continuous deployment, like, all the time. I have an idea in the morning. I talk with you at lunchtime. At the end of the day, it's out there. Don't tell me, like, I got to go create a story. I've got to reprioritize it or something. But let's talk about this future, because I think something that we don't talk enough in the Agile community about and in companies is, how can people prepare for this? How can people prepare? So if you were supposed to think of, skill sets that some people would have to be, or mindset of how people would work, what ideas do you think in the future that we see, in the future, like the next 5 or 10 years, right? Let's say, you would think, yeah, this is what people should be prepared to do or be capable of doing. Hey, Eliot, do you have any ideas that
I'm not,
trends?
I'm not sure I do. I think I'm
Because
too
I
old
do,
to think that
but
far into the future.
Eliot, wait, okay.
I can't get my head around
Are you planning
it.
to retire? Are you planning to be done soon so you can't be
No,
bothered?
I'll never retire.
Big, I love that. I love that.
It's too much fun. No, I don't know. I mean,
I have one thing, but sorry, Eliot.
No, I mean, I don't think I have any useful. I want to hear what the kids have to say.
What the kids have to say. I'm not as much of a kid. I'm a kid at heart, but I'll just get started, and then I'd like to hear what some other people have to say. So I know someone. His name is Dan. He was in a scenario where he worked for a government agency, and he was a consultant. And he came in, him and his account manager, and all these directors and all these VPs at the government agency were like, you guys did such a great job on this project. Wow, it's like what we were trying to do for like 2 years, you were able to do in 6 months. You did it, and it saved us millions of dollars and everything. How did you do it? Get your whole team here. We want to congratulate them. The account manager was like, oh, thank you for such positive news and everything. That's the team. It was Dan. And all the VPs and directors just stared at that. No. Where's your DBA? Where is your project manager? Where is your product person? Where are your developers? Where are your testers? Bring everybody here. And the account manager said, Dan is so darn good. He was able to do that all himself. And I'll never forget that Dan said, and this is how we are not, some people are not yet accustomed to this change. Everybody in that room turned from being really happy about this product that was delivered so quickly to, what? We paid all that money for just one person? One person? No, this is a scam. This is not right. We thought you had a team of 15 people at least that we were paying for. And so they have not understood that Dan told me I used, and this is not an advertisement or commercial for AWS, but he said, I used 19 different services on AWS to do automated deployments, automated regression testing, all these things. Like I just met directly, he put on his product owner hat or whatever, met directly with some of the end users, shadowed them, saw what they were doing in their cubes at this government agency with the tool and everything, says, I got that, I got that, I got that. Okay, there are 5 main things that I've got to do here. Got it. Go do stuff real quickly, demo it for them, get feedback, and in an iterative way, in a few months, he delivered something that just blew everybody's mind away. But it was just Dan. It was just Dan. And this is something that people, if they don't understand it now, they'll understand it soon. That in the future, an expectation I can see is that someone will be expected to be able to do multiple roles of what we see today. Today we see, like, already the developer is turning into a full stack developer. It's like everybody is in the same team. It doesn't matter if you develop, you test, or Scrum Master, or whatever. Like all of a sudden, you'll kind of have someone that before was just maybe a coder start to be able to actually meet with people in the sales department, see how they use their tools, and wouldn't even need to ask for stories. Wouldn't even need to say, drop something in my Jira backlog. The person is going to look, take down some notes, create his or her stories or stickies and everything, and actually deliver something that he can get feedback on. I mean, does this make sense? Hey, like Eliot?
Yeah. I mean, so that's certainly been my experience. I mean, I've gone from having to go buy a book and wait 2 weeks for it to come to the bookstore to I go online, I Google something, 15 minutes later, I've cobbled together those same 19 services and downloaded a piece of software, and boom, I've got a website going, right? So the technology has enabled, that single person to do the job of 10 or 15, and that's only going to increase, right?
It's only going to increase.
Yeah. So.
And so I think the key thing there is, I don't want to scare everyone by saying, oh, if you're just doing one role, I want to say, encourage people, stretch your mind a bit, right? Stretch your mind, stretch your capabilities, stretch your understanding of the product that you're doing work on. Stretch your mind, understand more who the end users are and everything, because the day will come where just being able to work on a prioritized backlog and get that stuff done, that will be awesome. That is good enough now, but the day might come that no, that's not enough, right?
It's not enough, right?
It's not enough to do that. Like, it was enough in 2022, but it's not enough wherever in the future it is. Because you know what? We need people that can do end-to-end work here and deliver product. What Dan did that actually ended pissing people off, because they're like, wait a second, we thought we were paying for 10 people. And you're like, well, you just paid a lot more for Dan for a shorter amount of time. Like, we didn't tell you that we're going to be done in 6 months. You thought it was going to take 2 years, but we're already done, right? But they didn't calculate it like, oh, we actually got what we paid for in a shorter amount of time. No. So that whole concept of Dan is going to become more popular. Is going to be like, use all these automated services that are out there to do work that maybe was done manually by multiple people in the past.
Right.
It's as simple as that, right? Simple as that. Oh my goodness. Any last comments as 4 minutes to go. And as always, we start on time, we end on time. Any comments, closing comments from our guest speaker, Eliot, today? Why don't we start with that? Just closing comments.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a journey, and it's amazing to see where Agile has come. It'll be interesting to see where it goes in the future. But it seems embedded and entrenched. I mean, because I just went through, like in my organization, we just went through the experience of I said, hey, we should be doing this Agile stuff. Some other people went and took the SAFe training, came back, hey, said we're going to do this. All the management was like, yeah, we're in. We'll do PI planning for the entire organization, third quarter, no problem.
Yeah.
There you okay.
Like you didn't have to fight anymore.
No fight.
About
No
this.
fight.
It's stuff
we
like
expected a fight, and there wasn't one.
We expected
anyway.
a fight. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
It's become an established practice, and I think that the challenge is going to be how can people just keep on evolving and improving their agile mindset, right? Because sometimes these process frameworks and everything don't get the maximum value out of
I mean,
agile.
Yeah. So one more thing I would say is, in the context of that, like agile frameworks, go back to the manifesto and remember that it all fundamentally comes down to those 4 principles and the 12, whatever they are.
The 4 values and the 12 principles.
And the 12 principles, right? That's what it's about, right?
That's what it's about. And if you can do that and create your own framework, do your own thing, imagine what you're able to achieve, right?
Yep. Exactly.
Awesome. One last question before we're done in 2 minutes. Anaga.
Hi. So one comment and one question. One is, as we speed up, last time I heard that there was this sense and response in the portfolio management. And when we do something faster, the sense and response goes down because there is not enough time to process information.
And my first feeling to that is you're processing too much information. Maybe try to have smaller increments of information to process, but do continue. Sorry.
Right. So, and one simple example is driving. When we are driving and there is a curve, we slow down because we need to sense and respond to the terrain we are on, compared to when we are driving on highway, and we can just speed up, and I guess takes us up to 80 miles or something like that.
Yes. No.
So it depends on where we are and the sense of response system, how it is developed. And I forgot the second one, so I'll leave it there.
But Eliot, I think that is a key thing, that as things speed up, you also have to find out when you slow down,
right,
to absorb the data points, to absorb the feedback, because sometimes when we go so fast, we don't have time to take in, like, oh, wait, the last 2 deployments we made didn't really add the value from a customer perspective, right? Because you're going so fast, you don't take in the data points. So thank you for that point. I think it's very important that we not only improve how fast we get stuff out there, but we improve how fast we can retain the feedback. And sometimes we just have to slow down to be able to get that feedback and really dissect it and see, this is what is our best thing to focus on, our return on investment. Absolutely. So folks, 1 o'clock Central Time. Thank you for joining. We'll be posting this recording on our Agile Austin YouTube channel. Round of applause for our guest speaker, Eliot Kimber. Thank you for coming out.
My pleasure.
Virtual
Thanks for having me.
Virtual clapping. Thanks for coming out. Folks, everybody else, have a pleasant Friday weekend and stay agile. Okay, stay agile, my friends. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. And we are stopping the recording right now.